Holosky Podcast. We're your hosts. I'm Steven.
And Kyle.
It's Monday, Holocult. You know what that means. You've chosen us to hang out with you and get you started on your work week. Kick it off right. It's just the right thing to do. It's cool. It's fun. It's hip. You know, just all the hot keywords. But anyway, thanks for hanging out with us. And check out all our social medias. Facebook, Instagram, YouTube, Twitter, TikTok, Discord, Reddit. Search up the cult. You'll find us there. Come join it. It's fun. Be part of the community. It's a good time. If you're new here, you're gonna want to, and you don't want to listen to us talk, you're gonna want to fast forward to about the 5-minute mark when we get into the actual show, because we do some other stuff before the show. Some people like it. Some people don't. Different strokes for different folks. But if you have a paranormal experience you'd like for us to show on our listener experience show, that was a weird series of words. Kyle's got some information for you, though.
I do. You write your story out, shoot over the email. It's going to be holoskypodcast@gmail.com. We're going to get it. We're going to file it. We're going to air it. I know I've been a little bit behind. Just had a lot going on. Sick people, some deaths in the family, stuff like that. It's been a little crazy.
We're trying our best.
Yeah, we are trying the best.
Which is a lot of other people's worst.
I mean, yeah, you're right. We do what we can. I also was talking to Steve and kind of going to start a give and thanks segment where people who put on for us get free advertisement, whether they need it or not. It's just kind of what we do. And I'm ill-prepared on one person in mind, but on this episode, I'm going to shout out Tony Merkel. If you're done listening to us, go check him out. That was a dude that gave us a chance when nobody else did and kind of slingshotted us to where we are now. So we're always going to be grateful for that. We appreciate that. So that's basically what it's going to be. Just quick shout-outs for people, free advertisement for anyone to do better, because me and Steve want to change the landscape and kind of create a better community instead of a community, because we talk about it all the time. These paranormal communities just consume themselves, and I don't feel like ours really does that. You know, and we're also just trying to put on for people, even though there are some people out there in this field that, you know, they like to talk a big game, but they don't. You know, they might, heck, Steve, they might, you know, talk to your spouse and convince them that you got demonic entities, and then that spouse leaves you, and, you know, things like that happen. I mean, that's just theoretical, of course. So we're not like that. We're trying to change the landscape and just do better.
I'm here because I like drama.
Yeah. Just trying to do better, you know?
It's easy.
That's all we're trying to do. Do better. Create a good, loving community and move forward.
Just moving forward.
I know you appreciate that. Hypothetical situations.
All right. If you'd like to support the show, you can hop on over to the Patreon and sign up for that. You get extra episodes over there. I think we're in the 50s now. You get our regular shows posted early, no ads. That's cool, you know. What else we got over there? Casket Breath jams, coupons to the merch store sometimes, early drop like announcements, all kinds of stuff. So $7 a month, you can get a Patreon. Speaking of merch store, holoskypodcast.com. Go over there, check out the swag. Again, we're running through the back stock before we get some 2025 drops in, trying to clear out some inventory, make some room. So go check that out. Shirts, hats, stickers, all kinds of good stuff. Best thing you can do, share the show word of mouth. Throw Holosky's name in the hat to any weird podcasts, or anybody who listens to podcasts first and foremost. You know, send them our way. But if you have other weird and creepy podcasts you'd like for us to link up with, hit them up, throw our name in there, tell them to reach out to us, and it'll be a good time. You can also go to wherever you listen to podcasts and leave us a 5-star rating and review. Leave us a 1-star, but we'll just make fun of you. Not on the air, but behind your back.
We do a lot of that.
So,
Thanks for the good The good laughs.
But if you leave us a nice one, we'll read it on air. Like this one in particular. From this week's, let me get this right. This week's 5-star rating and review comes to us from One Grateful Sub. And they really are, actually. One Grateful Sub says, 5 stars, the Goat Emoji Podcast. I've been listening to you since you... Okay, let me try this again and learn how to read. I've been listening to you since just about your first episode, and subbed straight away. I've got to say, yours isn't the only podcast I subscribe to. I also have to say, yours is absolutely one of the very best I subscribe to. Your banner takes the show from a 9 to a 10++, and the subject matter is beyond exceptional. From a very grateful listener, always ready for another episode, and ecstatic when one hits. Thank you. Salute emoji, metal emoji, goat emoji, fist bump emoji, thumbs up emoji, fire emoji.
Hell yeah.
Hell yeah. Well, One Grateful Sub, we are 2 grateful hosts. Thanks for leaving such a positive review.
True story. That brings me to my next point. Thank you. I appreciate you. See, there are a lot of people out there that get a little agitated with Steve and I when we talk about random shit, like food, stuff like that.
Suck it.
But you can do that. Also, I figured it out because some of the greatest conversations that most people have, I know this is a new era and this is probably a foreign concept to a lot of people. However, one of the coolest moments is when you're sitting around the dinner table or something with your family and conversation flows. And I got to thinking, I was like, oh, that's what this is. That's what this is. This is a family. So if you're not trying to like partake in family conversation and enjoyment, this probably isn't the show for you, and that's okay. You can go be by yourself and bitch about the world, while the rest of us are having fun, talking about Bigfoot and ghosts and aliens and banana bread and stuff like that.
I wish I had some banana bread right now.
Same. It actually made me hungry.
Yeah.
Or microwavable burritos.
Yeah, solid. But yeah, just keep your negativity to yourself.
Join the family.
Or keep your negativity to yourself.
Or that. Preferably join the family.
Yeah, not if you're going to be a fucking Debbie Downer.
Yeah, we don't like that. We like Debbie cakes.
See? Okay, now, what timestamp?
Hey, not that bad. 7:50.
7 minutes, 50 seconds.
Yeah, not that bad.
Dang. So today, I've talked about her before, right? And she's one of my favorite UFO researchers in the game, but not in the game anymore, because RIP.
RIP.
RIP. That being said, we're going to talk today. I looked into a little bit of stuff about Dr. Karla Turner, who is kind of an OG in taking a stance against the alien abduction agenda. There's a lot of information here. I just kind of did a preliminary episode. If you guys are into it, I can go way deeper later if you want. Just kind of see how it hits. Dr. Karla Turner died of cancer on January 10th, 1996, after being threatened for her work on the alien abduction agenda. She was just 48 years old. Since then, several other people involved in UFO investigation have also experienced threats followed by highly unusual, fast-spreading cancers. Several of her case studies are also dead at this point. Karla was widely respected in the UFO community for her research on alien abduction. She was a scholar and a professional educator. She earned a PhD in Old English Studies and taught at the university level in Texas for more than 10 years. In 1998, she and her husband and son endured a shocking series of experiences and recollections that forced them to recognize that they were alien abductees. Karla's response to this information, this life-altering information, was for her to drop her professional university career and turn her full attention to abduction research. This would kind of inspire her to write 3 books. The first one is called Into the Fringe, which told of her own experiences between her and her husband and her son. Then she wrote a second book called Taken, Inside the Alien Human Abduction Agenda, which profiled a series of abduction stories from 8 women whose experiences included both alien and human-esque abduction scenarios. And it kind of goes from being like not so bad, kind of benign, to some really negative elements that kind of flow throughout these series of abductions and well into other cases that she studied. She kind of wanted to illustrate the complexity of the alien abduction scenario, right? It's just kind of touching on how a lot of the different facets of alien abduction kind of spread throughout cases. Like there's a lot of commonalities between the alien abduction cases. She also wrote a third book called Masquerade of Angels. It was co-written with psychic Ted Rice and recounts Ted's lifelong encounters with strange entities whose identity hovered in some like weird gray area between angelic and demonic. Karla was actually working on a fourth book when she became severely ill in 1995, and note that she passed in 1996 on January 10th. So whatever this cancer was that she got took off pretty quick.
It was really aggressive.
Yeah, it's crazy. Karla was one of the few alien abductees who found a respectable position in ufology after she made some strong claims about alien abductions. Her extensive research into the subject revealed that aliens manipulate perception, control our consciousness, cause unexplained illnesses, cause mental decline, and engaged in gruesome activities in underground facilities as well as off-planet. Her findings highlight the alarming physical, psychological, and spiritual consequences faced by abductees, raising questions about the true nature and intentions of these extraterrestrial encounters. Dr. Turner was an intrepid human rights activist and alien abduction investigator. She had been involved in studying alien abduction since 1998, which again caused her to write her 3 books. She goes in to talk about Ted Rice, who was kind of the focus of her 3rd book. And I point this out because one particular scenario that she kind of covered in that book was Ted. He was 8 years old, and he witnessed his grandmother, right? So he wakes up, he sees his grandmother standing in the kitchen. His grandfather had passed away sometime prior to that. So I think it was a few years prior. As he's standing there, he sees his grandmother in the kitchen, and then his grandfather manifests in front of her and begins like demanding her to be like intimate with him.
Oh, that's weird.
Weird, right?
And highly inappropriate.
Yeah. Yeah. So this manifestation of the grandfather's trying to coax the grandma into doing things they used to do, when all of a sudden, as they're watching this take place, he said that he could remember his grandma being so confused, like conflicted, that her deceased husband was there, that she did want to embrace him being there. But as they're standing there, whatever this entity was that was taking the shape of her grandfather, or of his grandfather, morphed into this weird reptilian reptoid entity, which, long story short, resulted in his grandmother getting severely ill and dying not long afterwards. This kind of sparked Karla's interest in Ted, which Ted has a podcast now. He co-hosts a podcast, or did. I don't know if it's still active, but I think it's called Alien Talk, where he goes in to a lot of his encounters. So definitely check that out if you want to look into it. Dr. Karla Turner lost her battle with cancer in 1996, not long after her work was published that described her firsthand encounters and those of her families. In her work, she suggested that the abducted are targeted individuals and not randomly chosen. She was convinced that the military targeted abductees in response to the reports that people had made, which is interesting because me and you had talked about that prior to coming in here and recording.
Yeah, it was kind of on the lines of like, we've heard accounts of course, abductions from aliens, and then almost simulated alien abductions perpetrated by governments. And I was telling Steve, I was like, one angle to that could be the government's wanting to know what made Steve so special to be abducted by extraterrestrials. So then now the government's like, well, let's observe this person. Let's experiment on this person to see what makes them significantly more important than, say, Kyle down the street. It still doesn't really explain why they went about it in the guise of an alien abduction, but as of right now, it's probably about the best that I got.
Yeah, she kind of touched on like how normally abductions, when you hear them take place, like they're kind of like portrayed as being taken onto a ship and then being taken off planet. But in the research that she did, not only did she have that, but she also had like inner Earth experiences where people were abducted and taken inside the Earth into military grade compounds. So kind of leaning toward that possibly the military has a lot more to do with this. Certain abductions, maybe not all of them, but certain abductions than we like to think, which, who was it? Max Spears also said that 99% of alien abductions is military, which is pretty weird.
It is weird, and it's something, that I don't necessarily like that narrative, but I'm also not that surprised by that narrative.
Yeah, it would make sense when we were talking and you said it makes sense that if an actual alien abductee came out and talked about it, and then like the continuation of their abductions were done by the military, that makes sense.
Yeah.
Like what is so special about this person that has the aliens interested?
I just can't wrap my brain around like why would they like stage an alien abduction? That part to me is bizarre. I guess maybe the best excuse I could come up with is like in the context, like let's say you are abducted by the government, but they influence your brain and memory to remember an alien abduction. Is that like a just in case scenario in case Steve's brain starts to regain consciousness during this experiment operation, or if he does start to remember, it's better off to at least assist him in thinking that aliens did this, so that way, twofold, we don't get blamed.
Yeah, that's what
and then if it does come out, he looks like a crazy because he's claiming he got abducted and experimented on by aliens.
It could also be them like trying to replicate the exact scenario.
Oh, good point.
To kind of get to elicit the same reaction, maybe the same emotional responses that happened during the alien abduction, maybe.
Yeah, that would be more on like a scientific level. I mean, that does make a lot of sense, but that means like scientifically there's pieces of that puzzle that are far beyond my comprehension.
Yeah. In one of her interviews, Dr. Turner explained how she became involved in the field. Initially, her family had no knowledge of the phenomenon. She wasn't interested in UFOs, didn't care about UFOs, didn't really even think about it. She was a little bit into the paranormal. What happened was she was an English teacher, right? Or an English professor. So one of her what's the word I'm looking for? She had her class work on writing a paper, and she gave them a topic of like the paranormal. And one of the people decided to write about alien abduction. And in the stuff that they were referencing, she started to notice that these things were happening in her own existence. So this kind of got her wheels turning to where she was like, man, maybe this shit is really happening to me. So in that note, she started looking into literature about UFO sightings and abduction encounters. This did not meet up to what she was looking for, so she took it upon herself to conduct her own research and find trustworthy answers from experiencers. She first started out documenting her family's experiences, again, which caused her to write the book Into the Fringe. Eventually, she met up and worked with a ufologist named Barbara Bartholick from Tulsa, Oklahoma. She was a researcher and helped work on these cases and also brought her other cases to investigate. It was discovered that abductions were transgenerational in Karla's husband's family, with accounts dating all the way back to the early 1900s, with her husband's great-grandfather who had experiences, the grandfather, the father, so on and so forth, even down to her son, which is a scary thing to think about in itself.
Yeah.
Especially for people that have experiences. Turner and her family members, including her son, brother-in-law, sister-in-law, and their children, all had experiences related to abductions. Some family members were initially hesitant to discuss their encounters until they learned about Turner's own experiences. Hypnosis was used in the research, although it had been controversial, with some researchers suggesting that it can lead to false memories. Turner's opinion on these issues is not stated in this particular given excerpt. In her book Taken, she discussed the idea that some prominent abduction theorists should avoid. Like in the UFO world, especially back then, you got to consider this in the early 90s, they didn't want the people to look at aliens as good or evil. They just wanted people to keep a neutral stand, keep it scientific, and try to figure out what the base of the phenomena is. She said, this is dumb. Right? She said, this can't be done, nor should it be done. She said that abductees deserve to have a right to know, like, how their participation in the abduction would be used by their abductors, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like people have rights, and whoever these entities are they're just not giving a shit about them.
Yeah, which we've had that conversation countless times.
Yeah. So, and because she was kind of the OG, like, spearheading that whole movement, 30 years ago now.
Yeah, the hard thing is, though, the hard thing with that, like, I agree with it. Don't get me wrong. Don't get it twisted. But I think she is looking at it from a humanitarian standpoint, rightfully so. But we don't have any evidence that they operate on the same wavelength as we do. Because in comparison, and I hate to make this comparison, but you could compare that situation with people being abducted the same way humans deal with, like, cattle.
Oh yeah, she makes that.
Does she?
Yep, she goes on to talk about it. Where we're at here, she goes on to, like, talk about, you have a right to know what your participation is in these abduction scenarios. Under what circumstances and what reasons would the abducted be, quote, made a part of this agenda, since they have been, quote, implanted, trained, and programmed to participate in other future scenarios. The abductees have the right to know for what purposes our minds, bodies, and souls are used for. Which is, that's pretty...
It's fair. I'm not going to argue that at all. Like I said, I would like to hear her argument with say, cattle and what we do to them. She compares it, like, later on. I got like a list of 19 things that she kind of points out in the abduction phenomenon, which it's going to be interesting. So Dr. Turner's main concerns regarding alien abductions were the aliens' cruelty toward abductees, both physically and mentally. Victims experienced traumatic events such as forced impregnation, painful miscarriages, and severe injuries. Turner believed that the aliens had complete control over the minds of humans, using psychic technology to manipulate their perceptions and memories. She disagreed with those who saw the phenomena as positive, arguing that understanding it was beyond our capability. She questioned the purpose behind the aliens' agenda and expressed her belief that some alien groups, particularly reptoids, consumed human bodies for emotional or soul vibrations. She speculated that clone bodies lacked those qualities and wondered if hybrid beings were created as a food source for the reptoids. Before her death, she frequently spoke at UFO conferences in the United States and other countries, urging people to take action. She claimed that aliens were manipulating our perceptions, spreading disinformation to weaken us, and deceive us into thinking that they cared about us, when in reality, their intentions were self-serving and disregarded our well-being. Turner emphasized the need to regain control over the situation and confront these aliens. Dr. Turner discovered the 7 basic elements of the alien abduction phenomenon published by John Chambers in the UFO magazine. She went on to expand these into 19
different elements of alien abduction. If abduction reports can be believed, there's no reason to doubt the honesty of the reporters. The abduction phenomenon includes these 19 following details, which feel free to chime in if you hear one that interests you. Number 1, aliens can alter our perception of our surroundings.
Which I have brought up recently. Remember when we were talking about that? Because you, like the way I'm not a scientist or anything like close to that, obviously. But the way our vision works is just like it sends electrical current signals to our brain. Well, we can, like, as humans, we can manipulate currents on our own. It is not that far-fetched to think that some advanced civilization race being could manipulate even just the electrical signals in our brain, let alone beyond that.
Oh, yeah, I agree. And that's just essentially our like ocular and brain nerves.
Exactly,
that they're altering. It could go so far beyond that.
100%.
2, aliens can control what we think we see. Not just what we see, what we think we see. They can appear to us in a number of different guises and shapes. 3,
Which that right there, I mean, A joins with the first one, but that could account for screen memories.
Yeah.
And not even screen memories, but like we've had the discussions of like screen visions of them like being there, but it goes into what I was saying in the beginning, just being able to manipulate the signals from your eye to your brain. And instead of, you're looking at a Reptoid or a Gray, you're looking at Scooby-Doo sitting in the living room.
Grandpa.
Your grandpa.
Going to hug grandma.
Yeah.
It's gross. And it's creepy.
I think it makes perfect sense.
Yeah. Yeah. It just sucks.
Yeah, absolutely.
This one sucks worse. Aliens can take our consciousness, out of our physical bodies, disable our control of our bodies, install one of their own entities, and use our bodies as vehicles for their own activities before returning our consciousness back to our bodies.
Now that took a left turn that I wasn't prepared for. Because we've heard, and I do believe that they have the ability to take your consciousness out of your body.
Yeah.
And we've heard plenty of stories that describe such events. But being able to implant themselves, that's a little bit of I mean, I think we've covered in regards of like clones, them being able to, like, they're creating, I think that's what it was. They were creating human clones to essentially put on Earth to live among us.
Yeah.
In that situation, I've never really considered that they're taking your consciousness out and then taking your body for a joyride,
which makes you like it brings on a whole new like wonder as to what's going on, like when people are having out of body experiences or lucid dreaming. Like when we step out of our consciousness, because you kind of heard that a little bit when people were lucid dreaming and leaving their body like unoccupied. They were more worried not about aliens taking over, but other beings from the spiritual realm kind of taking over the helm of the old ship while the captain's out hanging out.
Right.
Which sucks.
That's a tough one for me, because I mean it really could explain situations, but I don't know that anybody's taken the time to go through, because you would have to venture off into true crime at that point, or because what I'm thinking right now is, why do we not have more accounts of this as an excuse for things?
Yeah, I wonder.
You know what I mean?
And you don't hear about it like this outside of this. You never hear about them implanting a different consciousness essentially into our bodies while ours is out. But it makes you wonder about like sleepwalking.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say. Sleep, because in your head you initially think of like the worst case scenario, when in all reality it could be the sleepwalking scenario of like they're just stumbling around the house and they're
just kind of testing
trying
it out.
shit out,
And then like maybe sleepwalking is testing it out, but then once they kind of get their senses about it, it kind of leans you on to like the NPC people, the people that just kind of are out there existing, not really, doing much to further society, but also not doing much to like falter it. Just kind of doing the same thing every day.
I was literally like, when you first read that, I was literally going to say NPC.
Yeah.
Like, as the first thing that came to my mind, and that's that. But you kind of circle back on a good point. Like, once again, your brain wants to go to the worst case scenario, but dude, I mean, like you said, the people that don't really contribute to society, but also don't do anything, on either side of the scale,
they're just out. They're just out there unassuming,
But then you look at it, like, remember the hit Sims game?
Mm-hmm.
Like, what if that's like that essentially could be a real life version?
It's crazy.
Of that scenario where they're just like, hey, I want to know, I want to know what it's like to be a human for a day. So I'm just gonna go try it.
And then they're like, hey, this is kind of legit. We're just gonna stay here. Sorry about your consciousness.
Yeah.
Have fun in the outer space.
It's kind of like all the people that got real upset and depressed about it was like Avatar syndrome or some shit like that, where they wanted to be able to do that so bad, to go live wherever those things lived. And I think there was like a big thing for a minute where people were extremely depressed because they couldn't go be one of those things.
I didn't hear about that.
Yeah.
I mean, you know what? People got their own stuff going on. So where are we at? Number 4, aliens can present us with an invisible state and can make themselves only partially visible. So glimmer beings, maybe?
Yeah.
Could attribute to some of the weird poltergeist activity, things being moved, which we do hear about, like the ghost haunting world and the alien abduction world. Since we started doing this,
they're pretty close.
They share a lot of space that I never thought that they would. And
think about like all the times that people get touched or their hair gets pulled.
I don't like that.
Or even John Edmonds at Stardust, he said that these things he essentially just describes and thinks that they were walking through like an unseen portal into his room. Like, what if they're just removing the cloak at that point?
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Who's going to believe the samurai sword guy?
Right.
5, abductees receive marks on their bodies other than the well-known scoops and straight-line scars, which are attributed to like surgical precision kind of things. Like they're like, instead of just doing experiments on us like we would do to animals, they get these other marks: single puncture wounds, multiple puncture wounds, large bruises, 3- and 4-fingered claw marks, triangles of every different possible sort. 6, female abductees often suffer serious gynecological problems after their alien encounters. Sometimes these problems lead to cysts, tumors, cancers of the breasts and uterus, and lead to hysterectomies. 7, aliens take bodily fluids from our necks, spines, blood from our veins, joints such as knees, wrists, and other places. They also inject unknown fluids into various parts of our bodies. 8, a surprising number of abductees suffer from serious illnesses they didn't have before their encounters. These have led to surgery, debilitation, even death from causes that the doctors can't identify. 9, some abductees experience a degeneration of their mental, social, and spiritual well-being. Excessive behavior frequently erupts, such as drug abuse, alcoholism, overeating, and promiscuity. Strange obsessions develop and cause a disruption in the normal life and destruction of their personal relationships.
What sucks about like the last few that you just did, like it falls in like that touchy water area for me, because it's like a buckshot statement in that clearly coincides with known ailments, so what I'm getting at is that could be an explanation for things to where, but then you have to fall in line with everything that we've ever been told is a lie, Or is it a shared symptom, essentially? Is there actually schizophrenia, but also at the same time, there's possession of the body in a realm like that? Because what she's saying is like, because everybody has it. The weird ailment that just pops up out of nowhere. But that's also life. It's also, I mean,
Yeah.
that ailment has to start somewhere, right?
Yeah.
And then it also does make sense that people with these encounters may turn to alcohol and drugs and promiscuity because
To deal with it.
that could be some psychological fracture essentially in their brain.
Yeah, which
Even if they don't know it, that's scary that you don't really know why you're turning to this.
Yeah, I think that's what she's like trying to point out, is that there's like negative symptoms of the phenomena.
Right.
They often get overlooked, but if you look into cases post abduction, like a lot of these things start ticking.
Yeah, and I'm not trying to like discredit it. What I'm getting at is like, it's just that is so hard to be a for sure statement in whatever case, because of to our knowledge, we have no scientific way to prove that it, their alcoholism is due to this alien abduction, not of what something happened in the past.
Yeah,
so
just life.
Yeah,
Yeah, I get it. It's a good point. 10, aliens show great interest in adult sexuality, child sexuality, and inflicting physical pain on abductees, which is gross again.
That makes me, like, real talk, that makes me think scientist.
Kinda does.
Like, no lie, because that is literally what scientists would do with things that they found.
Yep.
Reproduction and sexuality is always at the top of the fucking list, and pain and tolerance and shit like that is right there with it.
Pain and pleasure. She talks about it later on. Abductees recall being instructed and trained by the aliens. This training may be in the form of verbal or telepathic lessons, slideshows, or actual hands-on instruction in the operation of alien technology. 12. Abductees report being taken into facilities which they encounter not only aliens, but also normal-looking humans, sometime in military uniforms, working with the alien captors. Kind of leads back to what we were talking about earlier.
Well, I mean, that goes in 100 different directions. Maybe like the old treaties that we supposedly have had. And I mean, like, if you step way back, it makes sense. Right? I just truly feel like that's what a scientific section of the world would do, a government section of the world would do, because there's, when you're at those levels, you stop seeing humanity as individual humans. You look at it, this is a power token to further my control, or the great excuse, the greater good of humanity, because there's so much we can learn from this individual race of beings that are so more advanced than us. And like I said, they take away the individual in the equation. That's no more.
Yeah. Yeah.
And you could attribute it to the greater good, the power, the greed, whatever it is. I think it makes sense for people at that echelon, because at the end of the day, people at that echelon think and operate far differently than the way you and me operate.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. We are dumb.
And political.
Too dumb to carry a conversation.
Yeah.
Too dumb not to.
Intelligent or stupid.
13. Abductees often encounter more than one sort of alien during an experience, not just the grays. Every possible combination of gray, reptoid, insectoid, blonde, and widow-peaked individuals have been seen during single abductions, aboard the same craft or inside the same facility.
That's a weird one.
Which I was also, like, my ADHD spirals bad when I try to write. So I'll start like 50 different episodes, and then I'll I'll start writing, and I'll get to a point to where I'm either feeling it or I'm not feeling it, and then I stop. I was looking into encounters with mantis beings, right? And almost all of them in abduction scenarios start out with grays, essentially leading the abductions. And when they get to the craft or the room or wherever it is, these tall mantis beings come in, and they're kind of like the overseers, you know, instructing the grays what to do and where to go and like how to keep things sane and everything. So it does kind of lean into this, which is completely different than what I was looking into with with the mantis cases.
That, and in a lot of cases too, you hear about the small grays, and I feel like in a general description of them, they are more of like a worker race.
Yeah, that's what I picked up too.
Because even with classic gray encounters, you will hear of the small ones, and then we've also heard the tall ones.
Yep. I was just going to say that.
And the tall ones are the same thing. They're like the overseers of the small ones. So the small ones have the shit in the stick.
Yeah. And you also, and even without the mantis, I've heard other cases where there would be the tall, like palladium blondes, essentially being the same overseers of whatever these little grays are.
See, I haven't heard that very often. And that's it's weird to me.
Yeah.
But it's also not that strange, because even on the good side of it, you hear of the Galactic Federation where all these different races are working together. I mean, who's to say that's not? I mean, we also are under the assumption, like, the human brain is fucking weird too, because we don't zoom in and out enough when we talk about these things. Because I guess our brain compartmentalizes even different races of aliens, which is also really stupid to think about, that we wouldn't assume that, like, maybe we're the ants in the anthill and the rest of the galaxy is the rest of the galaxy. Like, what? Maybe there's a fucking alien mall where all different aliens go to hang out. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, because our brains view it as like the reptoids have this planet and the grays have this planet, and who's to say they all just don't have like the universe is their city block essentially.
They're just chill.
Like
let's all go see what the humans are doing, guys.
Yeah, I mean,
it makes sense.
Or just like, I don't know, like they're just, you know, it's like when you build a company, you don't only go for one type of person. You'll hire the best people for the job, essentially.
Yeah.
Everybody. All different races and creeds and orientations, and maybe that's how the rest of the universe actually operates, is just we're the ants in the anthill.
Which wouldn't be that shocking.
No.
It would be a wake-up call to a lot of people that
Yeah.
we're not as important as we think we are. But also, we're kind of important if all these aliens are coming to check us out, right?
Yeah, that's a good point.
So you also hear like that the grays are manufactured. Like, you hear people that have seen them in dumbs and stuff where they see these things coming off of conveyor lines, like an amalgamation of biological matter and like mechanical matter. So that could have something to do with it too. Abductees, quote, virgin cases, which I'm assuming are probably either like the first time they've been abducted or the only time they've been abducted, report being taken to underground facilities where they see grotesque hybrid creatures, nurseries of hybrid humanoid fetuses, and vats of colored liquid filled with parts of human bodies.
Once again, I feel like in the progress of any intelligent race, that is an inevitable hurdle. If you really like, from a scientific standpoint, I feel like any intelligent race, at some point in their evolution, they are going to start to tinker with DNA.
Yeah. It makes me wonder why they would bring, like, it almost is like a shock value thing. Like they're trying to get trying to elicit some emotional response. Like, why would you bring the abductee there and show them what you're doing with essentially possibly other abductees, unless you wanted to get an emotional response out of them? Because if I were going to take you somewhere and do something nefarious to you, I'm sure sure as hell not going to show you before I do it. You know, you're kind of showing your hand.
The best thing I can think of is that maybe they were just taking them there to collect samples from.
I guess if they got complete control over your body and your consciousness, you're not really going to do anything anyway.
Because also to further my point, it would be highly sus if large amounts of people were just disappearing without a trace in the middle of the night from their own beds. Boom, poof, gone. Like, if that became a trope across, say, even true crime, if true crime started picking up on this, it was with people just disappearing in the middle of the night.
Yeah, that'd be, or like a plane of 230 people just disappears.
Yeah, it's a lot of red flags unaccounted for. I know this happens in your parks and stuff like that, but these, I'm talking like a widespread,
not like
epidemic,
mass numbers.
Yeah, like just a ridiculous amount, you know. And we once again referenced the agreements we've had with these things, like, it's, you know, only X amount of people get taken. Who's to say we don't take samples from everybody to create clones? And those are the extra human parts you see floating in the vats. Who, you know, I don't know.
It sucks. Despite the reasoning, like, that would be awful.
I'm not trying to go to one of those places.
No.
And I'm like you. If I'm seeing this, I'm going to go ahead and assume that I'm not walking out of here.
Yeah, it reminds me of Fire in the Sky, where the actor playing Travis Walton, he's in, like, essentially the pod in the hive, and he breaks out, and he's still got that, like, umbilical cord thing wrapped around him, and he swings into the next one, and as he swings in there, it's just a rotting human corpse.
Oh, gosh.
I say, no, I'm good, I'm out. 15. Abductees report seeing other humans in these facilities being drained of blood, being mutilated, flayed, dismembered, and stacked lifeless like cords of wood. Some abductees have been threatened that they too will end up in this condition if they don't cooperate with their alien captors. I'm not going into a lot of the cases that Karla looked into.
I want to hear more of those cases
in this particular episode, but if you guys are into this and you want me to dive into some of the cases that she looked into, there are a lot of weird ones, specifically with stuff like this, where they essentially tell people that, you know, we're going to kill you and we're going to put a clone in your place.
So I also have a weird issue with that. That, to me, this is me personally, I feel like something like that should be below hyper advanced beings. And I say that because they have the ability to do whatever the fuck they want.
Yep.
Why do I need to convince you, unless there's something more going on with, like, the fear reaction that we've heard about, something to that degree. But outside of that, that feels like it should be below.
That's exactly
those beings.
I was watching an interview with Karla. She was talking about it. I think it was from 1994 or 1993. And she stated, she's like, I'm going to refer to them as ETs. She's like, but I want you to know that it's just a broad brush statement. She's like, I do not know where they come from. I don't know if they're off planet. I don't know if they're military. I don't know. She goes, all I do know is that they're finite and they're fallible. And I thought that was a hard ass statement to make.
It means we could fuck them up.
Yeah. Because she said, she goes on to point out a little bit later on, like, if specifically the ones that are referencing themselves like as angels or working with God, she said, if you're working with God, why do you need to threaten us? Why do you need to convince us? Like, you should have that power to do whatever you want to begin with.
Also, to be fair, now that I think about it, it's also, like, I know that it's twisting your arm. It also comes down to consent at that point too, in a weird way.
It's weird.
Which means, you know, that just further pours gas on the whole, like, cosmic law side of the equation.
Some of the cases she looked into are so crazy. Like the manipulation is top tier. 16. Aliens come into homes, temporarily removing young children, leaving their distraught parents paralyzed and helpless. In cases where a parent has been able to protest, the aliens insist, quote, "The children belong to us."
Motherfucker.
That's a number
That gives
one.
me the worst full body goosebumps ever.
That's top tier manipulation.
That's terror.
Yep.
That's straight up terror.
Sucks.
You would hope that I can't move.
Yeah. Yeah. You better keep my consciousness out of my goddamn body.
Because it's going to be essentially Kane or the Undertaker laying waste to that bitch.
And this we've talked about before in some of the cases that you got into. 17, aliens have forced the human abductees to have sexual intercourse with other aliens and even other abductees while a group of aliens observe these performances. In such encounters, the aliens have sometimes disguised themselves in order to gain cooperation of the abductees, appearing in such forms as Jesus, the Pope, certain celebrities, and even the dead spouses of the abductees.
The fuck? So people are like, let me get...
Just let it percolate.
I'm trying. So people are like railing the Pope?
That's what it... in the cases I observed, I did come across...
What a bizarre psychological
minefield
situation there. Oh man, like, because that, wow, does that go down?
I think, yeah.
Way fucking crazy roads.
I read some where people were protesting, like fighting against the abductions when a humanoid, like fighting against the abduction from the Greys, when a humanoid showed up claiming to be Jesus, saying that like they were encouraging the people to go with him. This is my will. This is what I want you to do. I didn't so much hear about people banging Jesus.
Okay.
So
well, that's what I'm like, because I'm like, man, you talk about top tier manipulation. Like,
apparently is a thing, because like people get way into their faith, right? And if they were just like, hey, this is my will to, get down. I think
like
people
hats off to the people that
protested.
stand and fight that. You know what I mean? Like, I
don't
feel
think
like you gotta have strong will.
Yeah, and I don't think it hits as hard for me since I'm not like a spiritual religious person. If somebody showed up and turned up as Jesus and was like, "Hey, I'm gonna need you to take care of me," I'm gonna be like, "Nah, dog, I'm good." I don't know what to tell you there.
We ain't about that life.
No, I'm sorry. You're gonna have to pick a different form to get me interested, right? But it is. It's just top tier manipulation, especially dead spouses. Like that almost hits
fucked.
worse than the Jesus or celebrity thing, because you were playing on like deep seated trauma and sadness, which is crazy.
Well, I mean, you think about this, and I'm not. Please don't take this out of context for anyone listening.
They're going to take it out of context.
I know, but I'm throwing that out there. Yeah. But think about the connotations of the Pope. All the dark rumors that come around Catholicism. And because that, like in my brain, if the ET did just a rough scan of environments where sexual things happen from places of high influence, you know what I mean? Like, maybe in their way of thinking, like, this is okay, this might entice someone.
Could be, trying to play on the trauma of people that experience weird
straight
shit.
trauma. I don't know. That's fucked up. I've never heard of aliens taking the form of dead spouses. That's terrifying. Although it does make me remember, once again, referencing Stardust Ranch, remember whenever he encountered a clone of his wife?
Yep.
Holy shit.
It's crazy. Sucks.
That was an aha moment.
Sucks.
Yeah, I hadn't thought of that till just now.
See, I told you guys.
That's fucked up.
It's on site. Don't tell me aliens are good.
Yeah, because at the time, that was one of the parts of the story. I'm not saying that I call bullshit, but it's one of those left curves.
Where you're like, okay, this is a little far-fetched.
Yeah,
right?
yeah, where it's like, this is a little much. Like, your story's already crazy. I don't know why we need to go this far, but now that actually kind of makes sense.
Yeah, top tier manipulation.
It's also weird that some alien races do things differently, where it's like you need to be manipulated to have intercourse with an alien, and other ones just take a sample.
Yeah.
That's strange too. Is that like a tech thing? Is that a cosmic law thing?
Maybe some species are just horny.
Yeah, I could see that. But once again, if you framed it in the context of scientists, I go, okay, yeah, that makes sense. Because scientists will observe just about anything to collect data. If it's all about data collection, then
that's a different kind of data.
Yeah, well, I'm not, but it's still data that they would collect, and then you could argue it turns into more of a perversion thing, or a
especially if you put on the
like
Pope's
old Greek days where it's like a hierarchy where they're like, you peasants, you're gonna do this as our entertainment.
Oh yeah, that could be, especially because they said like groups of them will just stand around and watch.
Yeah.
Like, hey, bang this other alien dressed up as the Pope, and we're gonna stand here. We're gonna observe.
So
we're gonna collect data.
That's so fucked up.
Yeah, aliens are weird. That's why I said on site. Nobody's gonna convince me that they're good. I'm sorry. I'm 10 toes down.
I want to believe that there's at least some cool ones out there, but man, there's a whole lot of evidence that points the other ways.
Yeah, I got 2 more of these. This one's terrible. Aliens perform extremely painful experiments or procedures on abductees, saying that these acts are necessary but give no explanation why, including painful genital and anal probes performed on children as well as adults, which is fucked.
That's so not cool.
No. 19. Aliens make predictions of imminent periods of global chaos and destruction. They say that a certain number of humans will be, quote, rescued, end quote, from the planet in order to continue the species, either on the planet or back on Earth after the destruction is over. Many abductees report that they don't believe they're alien captors and foresee instead a much more sinister use of, quote, rescued humans. So those were the 19 kind of negative connotations she picked up from all these abduction scenarios. She went on to kind of go in and break down the 4 main groups researchers believed that the abduction agenda fell into. These 4 main groups are: ETs have an objective scientific agenda. Everything they're doing is just for science.
Kind of what I was saying.
Yeah. 2, ETs have a self-serving agenda. 3, ETs have an human survival, human-oriented agenda, meaning essentially they're here to help us continue our path. 4, ETs have a spiritual agenda, where it kind of coincides with them trying to coax us that they're going to lead us to enlightenment and are like spiritually transcend to the next level of whatever humans do. She went on to kind of take the 19 scenarios and break them down like for evidence in favor of and favor against each of these theories. First, we have the objective scientific agenda. She came across multiple reports of these entities taking soil and plant samples, which is like what scientists do.
And we've heard accounts of aliens doing that.
Yeah. And she found accounts of this all the way back to the 50s. She states that she also found accounts of this all the way up to her research in the mid-90s. So they've been taking the same soil samples for 40 years, which she says, if these ETs are doing, quote, soil samples and plant samples for scientific research, they're the dumbest creatures to ever do it because it's been 40 years and they still haven't got it right.
Well, in my opinion, you can argue a lot of different.
Yeah, unless like probably different aliens, but like
not only that, but think about this too, which has just kind of hit me. What if they are taking soil samples over time frames to see how much our interaction
could be.
You know what I'm saying? How much we influence the environment, or there could be a lot of 100%. Different reasons why they take so many soil samples.
Yeah, pollution and stuff. Totally makes sense.
Hell, it could be maybe they put something in our atmosphere and they're coming down to test the effects of it. There could be so many reasons as to why they're doing what they're doing.
Yeah, and I kind of only added that in there because I thought which I thought was funny. She also referenced the reports of them doing surgical procedures on abductees, which would align with the scientific agenda. But then she also comes across cases of people with very non-surgical wounds, such as the scratches and scrapes and multitudes of bruises that wouldn't necessarily align with a scientific procedure. She also speaks of these procedures that result in pain and pleasure, inducing fear and emotional responses, such as the killing of pets and then bringing them back, showing loved ones being killed, or bringing back dead loved ones.
Well, that was a fucking shot fired.
Showing the end of the world and like other scenarios where they would almost be tracking what our emotional responses are to these specific things. But like Kyle said, it's not very different than what we do when we're experimenting on animals.
Yeah, I mean,
in pain and pleasure, right?
Yeah, I mean, it's literally like what we got.
Yeah. So maybe we are the cattle. Man.
I'm not going to argue that theory.
Sucks.
And like I said, it depends on the standpoint that you're taking in the current argument. Like I said, you start throwing scientific behind it, and a lot more of it starts to make sense.
Yeah. And I like that she kind of goes both ways with it. Like she shows the scenarios that kind of lean in that direction, and the scenarios that kind of play against it. Self-serving agenda. The ETs are crossbreeding to upgrade their race. ETs are using humans as a type of resource, such as emotional energy, farming our bodily fluids and tissues, even using humans as a type of food source, as well as people returning from abduction scenarios with severe injuries and illnesses that they didn't have before, as well as some people not returning at all. So that's a heavy negative connotation in their self-serving agenda.
Well, at the end of the day, in my opinion, no matter which way you boil it, I would say odds are in that favor. That no matter which way you look at it, whether it's, we're the food, we're this, we're advancing their race, we are still serving them to some degree.
Yeah. Yeah, which sucks. But in her contradictory data, she also came across reports where abductees are returned with increased psychic abilities after ET contact. There are also abductees that will report illnesses and ailments such as cancer being cured and completely gone after ET contact. Also, reports of spiritual and uplifting messages that are telepathically pushed toward people after the ET contact. So these things wouldn't necessarily be self-serving, right?
Which furthers my argument about at least some of them out there have to be cool, but you could also counter that with an argument of, well, I mean, we don't want our test subjects to die of cancer, so we're just going to go ahead and cure them so we can keep testing on them. So, like, I don't know. It's so hard to, you can't pin it down. That's why we are here, essentially.
Yeah, and she does a good job of, like, threading that needle between both of them. 3, the human survival agenda. Abductees are told often by the ETs when retrieving such human bodily fluids as sperm and eggs and implanting fetuses that they are doing such for the survival of the human race. They give a variety of reasons, such as human are becoming sterile and will go extinct if they don't, stockpile these things for us, or that the earth is on the brink of destruction. So the ETs are going to take a few humans or material of humans so they can start over anew when things chill out, which is all sus.
Well, it's just the theory of seeding other planets. I mean, that's what that is.
Then you have report of ETs interacting with the military. So this whole thing here is kind of sus, but you have reports of them interacting with military and shutting down nuclear sites during wartime operations and essentially almost like thwarting global chaos when they have a chance to. But then on the flip side of that, you also have UFOs shutting down bases and nuclear facilities when you're in times of peace. So there's no reason for that to happen, essentially.
I mean, it's as complex as we are, because you replace it in what you just said, replace the word alien with governments, and you'd go, okay.
Yeah, it's weird.
I mean, because the governments do the same type of shit.
It's weird.
And it has to deal with a bigger narrative of control of the masses.
She also states that a lot of times ETs are here and that they tell their abductees that they're essentially harvesting these materials just because they're just going to take them. They don't give them a reason. The spiritual agenda. Oftentimes references from ETs regarding a spiritual battle between good and evil. The ETs say they're here to help us ascend to a further plane of enlightenment. The ETs themselves refer to themselves as being angels, messengers from God, or the workforce of God. But on the flip side of that, a lot of abduction encounters are very deviantly sexual in nature. How do cattle mutilations fit into being in the spiritual agenda? Why are these abductions even happening at all if they're working with an all-knowing God? Why would angels or messengers from God need to perform rectal probes and harvest sperm?
There's not one part of me that, like, of all of everything, that's the one I would, if I had to put money was not in the list, throw that one out.
Yeah.
I think they mention anything spiritual and it's fucking manipulation.
That's what I think too.
I really do, because that topic for the human race has been top tier for about as long as you can think.
Yep.
And it's just that's a huge sales pitch. You coming in there using that, because people they do, and rightfully so. They have a soft spot for, religion and stuff. It's a huge thing in our culture across the world.
Yeah, and that's a big deal for a lot of people. It's a very manipulative topic if you want to use it as such.
Because even in today's world, because I was just thinking about it, but I would counter my own argument. In today's world, I feel like there still are so many religious people that it would still be an effective tactic. Because in my
100%.
head, I'm thinking it would be interesting to go through every abduction in recent times, because arguably we probably are at like a all-time low for believing in religion, but there's still, I would think that there's still a vast majority of people that believe, to where that collecting that data would be far too difficult.
Yeah, I do too. While you are spot on, probably like belief in a higher power is probably down, but it's still
still up there,
way up there. I'm going to end the episode with an excerpt from an interview with Karla where she talks about a couple cases. And if you guys want me to dive into this specific cases more from some of her research for another episode, just let me know. All right. The interviewer says abductees tell stories of seeing beings, angelic Nordics, for example, and then when they concentrate and try to focus on their memories of these beings, they disappear, but behind them are lizard people. Karla says, I'm not familiar with a number of these cases. I have heard other researchers talk about the same thing. In one case, I recount in my book, Into the Fringe, a man named James. James had a mostly conscious recollection with almost no hypnosis. He remembered being drawn into the proximity of a beautiful Palladian woman in white.
Weird.
Sounds weird. I read this case, so she's kind of like paraphrasing it. He was inside and he saw your typical white, like light, the room filled with light. So when he looked out, he saw this woman out in his field. And he said that she was like telepathically beckoning him. Come out here. We need to talk. Come out here and such. Well, she's a beautiful woman. James is just a dude. Of course, he goes out there to see what's going on. So he says this woman was very alluring and tender. She's almost being seductive in her actions, talking about like how much love she can bring to the world and all this stuff. She kept beckoning him to come and embrace her, give her a hug, essentially. When he got into the embrace and wrapped his arms around her, he thought that she was going to lean in to kiss him. And about the time that their lips were to touch, she vanished, disappeared entirely. What was left in his arms was, quote, a purplish black, bumpy, almost slimy looking character with fairly asymmetrical features. So just essentially just this like purpley flesh mass that was a beautiful woman.
Makes me think of like a slug.
That's gross. Would probably also pretty close to it.
You know what's weird about that encounter is I'm not going to get into specifics, but I know somebody who was semi-actively having an encounter like that.
That's weird.
Yeah.
Do they want to talk about
not
it?
not the sluggish part, but the part of seeing a woman outside on more than one occasion.
What?
Yeah. And the way that it's just the woman is described is as a ballerina.
We're going to talk about this off the air, aren't we?
Yeah, we will. I can't talk about it on air though.
Maybe they'll want to talk about it on there.
No, they won't.
God damn it.
No.
Anyway, James's case isn't over. So he goes on to state that the entity was very strong. And instead of embracing James, the creature threw him to the ground. This sucks. Maybe he doesn't need to check out the ballerina. Shoved a 2-foot-long tube down his throat into his stomach and extracted stomach juices. The next day when he woke up, he thought it was all a dream. But he woke up with a taste of bile in his mouth. The interior of his throat was sore and bleeding. He also discovered claw marks around both the sides of his neck where he had been held down. Whatever the entity was, there was something claw-like about it, which kind of matches a reptilian. Maybe as close as he was to it, he could not perceive the whole figure. But he did say that the creature had a bumpy covering, which could essentially equate to the rough, scaly exterior that are reported to be reptilian, often described as bumpy, rigid, bony, strong, or clawed. So Karla was a big proponent that reptilians are behind a lot of or a lot of the negative interactions or things that wanted to be perceived as reptilians, right?
Mm-hmm.
So that's kind of why she was going there. The interviewer says, apparently these beings have the ability to project different images. Karla says, some people say that they transform, they mutate, or change their own real forms. I don't accept that as accurate. I don't believe they really look like a blonde person. They do something to trick you, and then suddenly they look like a reptilian. I think that they are able to alter human perception. They certainly can project false images, such as Ted Rice's grandmother was shown her dead husband, so that she would consent to having sexual intercourse. Ted's grandfather had been dead for 6 years, and in the middle of having the encounter with what she thought was her restored husband, the image disappeared, and I suppose because the aliens wanted to get the emotional juice from her, she saw the reptoid on top of her instead of her dead husband.
That's crazy.
Gross.
It's disgusting.
But I just kind of thought that would be... That's all I got for today. That'd be kind of a little intro into Dr. Karla Turner. Definitely go look into her books, Into the Fringe, Taken, and Masquerade of Angels. Pick those up. Some of them are out of print, but some of them are starting to come back in. So if you can find them, grab them. If you guys want me to dive into some more of the cases that she studied, again, a lot of negative connotations here. A lot of bad alien juju. If you guys are into it, hit us up on the socials. Let us know. Comment on the YouTube. And I'll dive into some more of them in the future. Just let me know. So, that's it for today. Thanks for hanging out with us on this wonderful Monday morn. Hope everybody has a good work week. And just keep trucking through it. So check us out at all our social medias. You know the drill. Till we meet again, stay safe. Stay weird. As far as aliens go, it's on site.